Something in the air has already begun to shift, even if you cannot yet explain it, even if your mind keeps searching for logic while your heart quietly whispers that something is different this time. And I want you to pause here for a moment, not because you are missing anything, but because what is coming next will only reveal itself to those who are fully present. So don't rush this feeling away. There is a silence forming around your connection, not an empty silence, but a meaningful one, the kind that arrives just before a realization takes shape, the kind that carries answers without words, and somewhere, right now, your soulmate is standing at the edge of that silence, feeling something they can no longer ignore. It didn't begin today, and this is where it gets deeper. Something has been building quietly inside them for longer than you think, subtle moments, small realizations, unspoken thoughts that kept returning at unexpected times, like a memory that refuses to fade, like a feeling that keeps knocking even when ignored. And tomorrow morning, that quiet build-up reaches a point where it can no longer stay hidden. But here's what most people don't realize. It's not just about what happens to them, it's about what it unlocks between you. Let that sink in. Because this isn't a random moment. It's not coincidence. It's a crossing point, a shift that changes how they see you, how they feel you, how they understand everything that once felt confusing or incomplete. And the reason this matters is because you've already felt the echo of it, even if you didn't know what it was. Think back, just for a second. Have you noticed how certain thoughts about them have been returning lately, without effort, without reason, almost like something is gently pulling your attention back toward them, not forcefully, just enough to make you wonder why now? That's not accidental. That is connection moving before the moment arrives. And tomorrow morning, something within them aligns with that movement. But don't try to predict it, because what's coming doesn't follow expectation. It doesn't arrive in a loud or dramatic way. Instead, it comes through clarity, through a quiet but undeniable knowing, the kind that changes everything without needing to explain itself. And here's the part that might surprise you. They may not even fully understand why they feel it, but they will know that something has changed, something about you. About the connection, about the way your presence exists in their mind. It becomes clearer, more defined, more real than it has ever been before. Stay with me here, because this next part matters more than you think. This shift, it's not about perfection, it's not about everything suddenly becoming easy or ideal, it's about awareness, a moment where confusion starts to dissolve, where hesitation loses its grip, where something inside them quietly says, I see it now. And when that happens, even in the smallest way, everything begins to move differently. You might not see it immediately, you might not hear it in words right away, but you will feel it. There will be a subtle change, a difference in energy, a sense that something has opened that was once closed, and if you are paying attention, truly paying attention, you will recognize it. Don't skip this feeling, because most people miss it. They look for something obvious, something loud, something undeniable, and in doing so, they overlook the very moment where everything actually begins. And your connection, it doesn't work like that. It unfolds quietly, meaningfully, in layers. And tomorrow morning is not the end of something, it's the beginning of understanding. But wait, there's something even more important beneath all of this. Why now? Why after everything, after all the time, the distance, the confusion, the unanswered questions? Why does this moment choose to arrive tomorrow morning? That question, it matters, because the answer is not outside. It's not about timing alone, it's about readiness. Not just theirs, but yours too. Because while they've been going through their own quiet realizations, you have been changing as well, growing in ways you may not have fully noticed, becoming someone who can receive what once felt out of reach. And that's why this moment is so powerful, because it meets you both at a place you couldn't have reached before. Let that settle inside you. This is not about chasing, not about forcing, not about needing to do anything different. It's about recognizing what is already unfolding. And here's a thought that might stay with you longer than expected. What if the moment you've been waiting for doesn't arrive the way you imagined, but still gives you exactly what you needed? Pause there, because that's where understanding begins. Your soulmate, tomorrow morning, they step into something new, not because everything suddenly changes around them, but because something changes within them, and when that happens, their actions, their thoughts, their choices, they begin to reflect that shift, even in the smallest ways. And those small ways, they matter more than you think, because they are real, because they are honest, because they are not forced. And when something is real, it doesn't need to prove itself loudly. It simply becomes visible over time. So don't rush ahead, don't try to see the entire picture all at once. Stay with this moment. Stay with this knowing. Because something important is waiting for you, not in a distant future, not in some unreachable place, but right at the edge of what is about to unfold. And just as you begin to understand this, just as your mind starts to connect these quiet pieces together, something else begins to emerge. Something that changes how you see everything that led up to this point. But that is where the next part begins. And just when it feels like you've understood enough, something deeper begins to move, almost like a second layer revealing itself beneath the first, quieter, more precise, impossible to ignore once you notice it. Because tomorrow morning is not only about what your soulmate realizes, it's about the moment they can no longer return to who they were before it. Let that settle slowly. There is a difference between feeling something and finally accepting it. For a long time, they have been standing in between those two spaces, sensing you, thinking about you, questioning what it all means, but still holding back from fully stepping into that truth, not because they didn't care, but because something inside them needed time to become clear. And now, that time reaches its edge. But here's where everything shifts in a way you didn't expect. It's not a sudden decision. It's not a dramatic moment. It's something far more powerful, a quiet certainty. The kind that doesn't argue, doesn't hesitate, doesn't ask for permission. It simply becomes. Pause for a second, and feel that. Because this kind of realization, it changes how someone moves, how they think, how they respond, even if they don't speak a single word about it right away. And this is where you might start to notice something unusual. A calmness, a steadiness, a subtle presence that feels different from before, like the noise that once surrounded their thoughts has softened, and in that stillness, your place in their life becomes undeniable. But here's the part most people overlook. When someone reaches this kind of clarity, they don't rush. They don't act out of pressure. They begin to move with intention. And that's exactly what begins to unfold. So if you were expecting something loud, something immediate, something that demands your attention all at once, this may feel different. But different does not mean less. In fact, it means more. Because what is forming now is something that lasts. And I want you to ask yourself something, gently, without forcing an answer. Have you ever felt a moment where everything suddenly made sense, not because someone explained it, but because you simply knew? That is where they are stepping into. And when someone reaches that space, they start to see things they couldn't see before. They start to understand connections they once questioned. They start to recognize what has been in front of them all along. And yes, that includes you. Don't skip this part, because this is where the energy between you begins to change in a way that is subtle, but undeniable. You may feel it as a shift in your own emotions, a sense of calm where there was once uncertainty, a quiet confidence replacing the need to overthink. Or maybe, a gentle pull, like something is aligning without you needing to control it. That's not imagination. That's resonance. Because when one side of a connection becomes clear, the other side feels it, even without words, even without explanation. But wait, there's something even more unexpected beneath all of this. This realization they are stepping into, it doesn't just bring clarity. It brings courage. And courage doesn't always look like bold actions or big gestures. Sometimes, it looks like choosing differently, responding differently, allowing something to unfold that they once held back from. And that's where the real movement begins. Not in what they say, but in what they no longer resist. Let that land. Because resistance has been the only thing slowing this connection down. Not distance, not time, not circumstances, just hesitation. And tomorrow morning, that hesitation begins to loosen. Not all at once, not perfectly, but enough to change direction. And direction is everything. Because once something starts moving in the right direction, it doesn't need to rush. It just needs to continue. And that's exactly what you're stepping into now, a continuation that feels different from anything before it. You might notice it in small ways first. A thought that feels clearer, an emotion that feels lighter, a sense that something is finally making sense without needing to force it. And as these moments begin to appear, something else will quietly follow. Trust. Not the kind that demands proof, but the kind that grows naturally, because something inside you recognizes that this time, it's real. But here's where the story deepens even more. Because while this shift is happening within them, something is also happening around them. Subtle changes, quiet alignments, moments that seem small but carry meaning. Almost like everything is gently supporting this realization, guiding it forward without pressure. And if you look closely, you may begin to notice that these changes are not random either. They are connected. They are leading somewhere. And that somewhere is closer than it appears. Stay with this feeling, don't rush ahead, because just as this clarity begins to settle within them, just as their actions start to reflect something more certain, more grounded, more intentional, there is one final piece that has yet to reveal itself, a piece that changes not just how they see you, but how they choose you. And that is where everything takes a turn you didn't see coming. And just when you think the shift has revealed everything, something even quieter begins to rise beneath it, something that doesn't ask for attention, yet somehow becomes impossible to ignore once you feel it. Because what happens next is not about realization anymore. It's about choice. Not the kind of choice that is rushed or emotional, but the kind that forms when someone has finally seen clearly enough to stop questioning what they feel. Your soulmate, tomorrow morning, they don't just understand something. they begin to lean toward it. Pause there. Because leaning is different from thinking. It's different from wondering. It's the moment where the heart starts moving in the direction it once hesitated to face. And this is where everything becomes deeply personal, not just for them, but for you. You may not hear it in words immediately. There may be no sudden message, no dramatic moment that announces what is happening. But something will feel different. A quiet pull. A sense of closeness that wasn't there before. Almost like the distance between you has softened, not physically, but emotionally, energetically, in a way that feels subtle yet undeniable. And here's something most people never notice. When someone begins to lean toward you, they start removing the invisible walls they once built around their feelings. Not all at once, not perfectly, but enough to let something real come through. And tomorrow morning, that process begins. You might wonder, why does it feel so calm? Why isn't it overwhelming or intense in the way you expected? Because what is real doesn't need to overwhelm you. It settles, it grounds, it creates a kind of peace that feels unfamiliar at first, because you're used to searching, questioning, trying to understand. And now, suddenly, there is nothing to chase. Let that sink in slowly, because this is where the connection transforms from uncertainty into quiet knowing. And that knowing, it doesn't shout, it doesn't demand attention, it simply exists. But wait, there's a moment within this moment that matters more than anything else. A single point where everything could either continue forward or fall back into silence. And this is where your awareness becomes important, not because you need to do something, but because you need to recognize something. When this shift reaches you, it may come in a form you didn't expect, a simple interaction, a small change in tone, a feeling that something is more present than before. And in that moment, your response, your energy, your openness, it shapes what happens next, not by force, not by control, but by alignment. Because when two people meet each other with the same level of clarity, even in the smallest way, something powerful begins to form. And this is where your story with them begins to move differently, not in circles, not in confusion, but forward. Even if it feels slow, even if it feels gentle, even if it doesn't match the pace you once imagined. It is moving, and movement is everything. But there's something deeper, something almost hidden beneath all of this that you need to understand. This moment, tomorrow morning, it's not just a turning point for them. It's a reflection of everything that has been building between you, seen and unseen, spoken and unspoken. Every thought, every feeling, every time you wondered if something was still there. It all leads here, and that's why it feels different, because it is. And just as this new direction begins to take shape, just as their heart starts to move with a clarity it didn't have before, there is one final realization waiting, not for them, but for you. A realization that changes how you see this entire connection. Not as something uncertain, but as something that was always moving toward this moment, even when it felt still. And when that realization reaches you, everything becomes clear in a way you didn't expect. But that is where the next part unfolds. And just before everything finally settles into place, there is a moment so quiet, so subtle, that most people would almost miss it entirely, yet this moment holds the answer you've been searching for all along. Because what you're about to realize is not something new. It's something you felt before, just never fully trusted. Pause here, and let that thought breathe. All this time, you've been looking for a clear sign, something undeniable, something that confirms everything without leaving space for doubt. But what if the truth never needed to arrive loudly? What if it has been unfolding in small, precise ways, leading you here, step by step, moment by moment, until now? Because now, you're not the same person who once questioned everything, and they are not the same person who once held back. Something has shifted, on both sides. Not perfectly, not completely, but enough. Enough to create movement. Enough to create understanding. Enough to create something real. And here is where the final layer reveals itself. This connection was never about timing alone. It was about alignment. Not the kind that forces two people together, but the kind that prepares them to finally see each other clearly, without confusion, without hesitation, without the need to run or hide from what they feel. Tomorrow morning was never just about them. It was about both of you reaching a point where something could finally begin, without resistance. Let that settle deeply inside you, because this is where everything softens. The overthinking begins to fade. The uncertainty begins to loosen. The need to search for answers slowly disappears. And in its place, something much quieter arrives. Trust. Not blind trust. Not forced belief. But a calm understanding that what is meant to unfold is already finding its way. And here's something even more important. You don't need to chase this moment. You don't need to hold on to it tightly. Because what is real doesn't slip away when you relax. It becomes clearer, stronger, more natural. And that's exactly what this is. Becoming. So if you feel something shifting within you, even now, as you listen. If there is a part of you that feels calm instead of restless, steady instead of uncertain, don't ignore it. That is your sign. Not a loud one, not an overwhelming one, but a true one. And just as this understanding begins to settle, something else gently follows. A sense that this is not the end of a story, but the beginning of a new chapter you couldn't have entered before now. A chapter where things don't feel forced. Where connection doesn't feel confusing. Where moments unfold with a quiet sense of purpose instead of pressure. And as this chapter begins to open, you may notice something unexpected. You're no longer waiting. You're no longer wondering when. You're simply here, present, aware, ready, without even trying to be. And that is what changes everything. Because when you stop waiting and start recognizing, you meet the moment exactly as it arrives. And tomorrow morning, when that shift fully takes shape within them, when their clarity begins to reflect in the smallest ways, you will feel it, not as something new, but as something that finally makes sense. And that feeling, that quiet, grounded, undeniable feeling, it stays, not for a moment, not for a day, but as something that continues to unfold, naturally, gently, and in its own perfect way. So stay with this, don't rush ahead, don't look for something more than what is already forming. Because sometimes, the most meaningful moments don't announce themselves. They simply arrive. And everything after that begins to change.